Hi, I'm Robert from Delagify. I'm going to be spending some time talking about accounting in a really good movie about accounting, The Shawshank Redemption. For anybody who's never seen the movie, there are going to be some spoilers ahead. There's a lot of non-accounting things that happen too in the movie. I'll try not to talk about them to keep some of the mystique for you. Andy Dufresne, in a fit of drunken rage, takes a gun to confront his cheating wife. Even though he doesn't kill her, he is convicted of her murder.
I'm Andy Dufresne. Wife-killing banker.
And is sent away to jail where he has to adapt to being an inmate. He uses his accounting brains to get better treatment for the inmates and help the evil warden commit fraud. But it is all undone when in the end, Andy Dufresne walks out. The reason that I'm doing this is to give some non-accountants some more context about how realistic is the accounting that we see in the movies, and maybe for folks studying for the CPA or accountants out in the real world, maybe this will just be fun and you can critique my accounting too. Okay, nobody's perfect, all right? Without further ado, I'm just going to sit and watch it, talk a little bit about what I'm seeing and how good of a movie is it from an accounting perspective. So Andy Dufresne is drinking alone. That is very accurate. Accountants like booze.
I hear you're good with numbers. Oh, nice. Man should have a skill.
Good with numbers. That's a common misconception about accountants. You know, the math in accounting actually isn't that difficult. The hardest math that I have to do on a daily basis is which number is bigger. But it still helps to know a little bit of arithmetic. Really, the only math that you do in accounting is mostly addition and subtraction, but sometimes you can get tricky with a little bit of multiplication or division. Doesn't happen too often, though.
5 times 5 is 25.
Most of accounting, very, very easy.
So anyway, this lawyer fella says to me, his brother died a rich man, oil wells and shit. Close to $1 million.
$1 million bucks?
Yeah. Fucking incredible how lucky some assholes get.
Jeez Louise, you gonna see any of that?
35,000. That's what he left me. What do you think the government's gonna do to me? Take a big wet bite out of my ass is what?
Well, all right, you're gonna pay some taxes, but you'll still end up with...
Oh, yeah. Maybe enough to buy a new car, and then what? I gotta pay tax on the car. Repair, maintenance, got kids pestering you to take them for a ride all the time. Then at the end of the year, you figure the tax wrong, you gotta pay them out of your own pocket. I tell you, Uncle Sam.
Do you trust your wife? What I mean is, do you think she'd go behind your back, try to hamstring you?
That's it. Step aside, Mert. This is having himself an accident.
You don't push him off the roof. Because if you do trust her, there's no reason you can't keep that 35,000.
What did you say?
35,000.
35,000?
All of it.
All of it?
Every penny.
You better start making sense.
If you want to keep all that money, give it to your wife. The IRS allows a one-time only gift to your spouse for up to $60,000.
Bullshit. Tax-free?
Tax-free. IRS can't touch 1 cent.
Okay, so this isn't very realistic. First, I'm going to talk about it in terms of today's tax law, and then I'm going to rewind the clock and talk about it in terms of 60s tax law. So first, in terms of today's tax law, most people getting an inheritance, as long as it's outside of an IRA, you probably don't have to pay any type of taxes on it. You probably don't have to pay income tax. You probably don't have to pay any transfer, estate, or death taxes on it. Very few people actually have to deal with that, and it's for individual estates over $10 million. So most people have less than $10 million in my experience. If the estate has less than $10 million in it, and you're getting an inheritance, you probably don't have to pay tax. Double check with your tax professional before making any big decisions. So now let's talk about it a little bit from the 1960s side of things here. It was a little bit different when this took place. I don't know exactly which year we're talking about right here. Let's assume it's sometime in the 1960s. Taxes were very, very different back then. Andy is correct about the spousal transfer. So you can take money from you, transfer it to your spouse. You don't have to pay any types of taxes on that. That's still true today. Now here's the thing. In order for our guard, Captain Hadley, to transfer that money to his wife, he has to get it first. Once you get the money, that's when it's taxable. Not when you spend the money. That doesn't matter. So Captain Hadley would have to get it, pay taxes, and then transfer to his wife. It's a completely unnecessary step that doesn't save him any taxes. In some instances, you can kind of move around money in an estate, and it's through a process called disclaiming your interest. Basically what it is, Captain Hadley says, hey, I know my brother gave me some money. I don't want it. I don't want it. Just give it to the next person in the line. And Captain Hadley would do that if he knew that his wife was already next in line in that will. Maybe, I don't know. If that was the case, then yes, they can get around it.
I'm Deacons. I was thinking about maybe setting up some kind of trust fund for my kids' educations.
Oh, and then Andy says that, Mr. Deacon, you want your sons to go to Harvard or Yale?
He didn't say that.
God is my witness. And Deacon just blinked for a second, and then he laughed himself silly, and afterwards he actually shook Andy's hand.
Yeah, that's a very banker thing to say, that you got to promise your kids the best education in the world, right? That's what everybody likes to think of when they're setting up their financial plans, and it helps to kind of think of those best case scenarios when you're going through everything. Even if you don't actually have to save that much money, that's okay, because it's better to have too much money saved up than not enough.
The following April, Andy did tax returns for half the guards at Shawshank.
There's this idea that accountants are good at all types of accounting. Andy was in charge of a bank. He probably wouldn't be the best person to talk to about tax planning and all that other stuff. He probably knows a little bit about it, and he has the accounting mindset. Once you have the accounting mindset, it's really easy to go and move between the disciplines in accounting. So you can move from cost accounting to financial accounting to tax accounting. But usually in the modern world, accountants just kind of focus on one thing. That's a little bit less true at the smaller firms. The smaller firm, the fewer people there, the more you have to kind of touch everything. So it wouldn't be too unsurprising to see one accountant doing a bunch of different roles.
Year after that, he did them all, including the wardens. Year after that, they rescheduled the start of the intramural season to coincide with tax season. The guards on the opposing teams all remembered to bring their W-2s.
I can definitely see why the guards are really excited about having Andy there. It's hard to find a good accountant, and it's really hard to find a free good accountant. And if you do that, it's going to be out all over. When I was in college, I worked for a volunteer program. It's still around. It's called VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. I told all my friends, and I was very popular. They had all come to me to help them with their tax returns, and once the word gets out that you can give people help, they will ask you for help.
Appropriations Committee voted an annual payment of $500 just to shut him up. And you'd be amazed how far Andy could stretch it. He made deals with book clubs, charity groups. He bought remaindered books by the pound.
A lot of times in a company that's not necessarily going to be your accountants, but your purchasing department that does that type of work, where they're trying to get the best deals and they're trying to really make things stretch, what the accountant can do is tell you, hey, we have money over here that we're not using. Let's just scooch it over into this account and it'll be fine. There's a lot of limitations on what an accountant can actually do there, and it's a lot more common to see a procurement professional or a purchasing professional doing the real type of work that we've seen Andy doing here.
And oh my Lord, how the money rolled in.
If this keeps up, you're gonna put me out of business.
Ed.
This pool of slave labor you got, you can underbid any contractor in town.
Ed, we're providing a valuable community service here.
Well, that's fine for the papers, but I've got a family to feed. Sam, we go back a long way. I need this new highway contract. I don't get it, and I go under. That's a fact. And just have some of this fine pie my missus made especially for you. You think about that.
Ed, I wouldn't worry too much about this contract. Seems to me I already got my boys committed elsewhere. You be sure and thank Maisie for this fine pie.
All right, here we go. Here's the fraud, the good stuff. Now, here's every accountant's first place to look for fraud. At the heart of this scheme, what we're looking at here is a very simple bid rigging scheme. And what the warden is doing is he's taking money directly to him in exchange for not bidding out government contracts.
At a bare minimum of expense to Mr. and Mrs. John Q. taxpayer.
Of course, Norton failed to mention to the press that bare minimum of expense is a fairly loose term. There are 100 different ways to skim off the top. Men, materials, you name it.
Maybe it's a little questionable if the warden is doing everything within the rules, and it's a conflict of interest scheme. And basically what that means is you take something that you got as part of your job. In this case, it's the warden's control over the prisoners, and then you're using it for personal benefit. This gets really muddy really quickly because some businesses have rules where you can benefit. So for example, if you get a phone through work and you are allowed to take personal calls on that phone, that's okay as long as it's within the rules. You're not stealing. They said it's okay. That's fine. That's part of your overall employee package. Here, you have control over the prisoners, and it seems like he's getting recognition for the contracts. Maybe that's going into the prison's budget. Maybe he's billing them out. It's really unclear from what's going on in this movie here. If he was putting that money right into his pocket, then that would probably be a fraud scheme.
I know you're good, Andy, but all that paper leaves a trail. Now, anybody gets curious, FBI, IRS, whatever.
Sure it is, but not to me. And certainly not to the warden.
All right, who?
Randall Stevens.
Who?
The silent partner. He's the guilty one, Your Honor. The man with the bank accounts. That's where the filtering process starts. They trace anything, it's just going to lead to him.
But who is he?
He's a phantom, an apparition.
All right, money laundering. Oh my goodness, how easy money laundering must have been in the 60s. There's just so many banks and they're not all talking to each other. Oh boy. But this is a very basic money laundering scheme. I can tell you now, if you tried to pull this money laundering scheme today, you probably wouldn't get away with it. And basically what Andy is doing is he created this entirely fictitious person, and he's cashing the checks, he's filing the tax returns, so all the money is legitimate in the banking system, and then he's just keeping it. Now, where this would not fly today is investigators would probably look and see if your employer is paying you. And if there's huge deposits like we're seeing here, they want to know, where did those huge deposits come from? Why do you have so much cash that nobody else is trying to deduct? And you'd probably have some people sniffing around your business. Overall, I would give this probably a C+. It is not super accurate in some of the tax elements. They just don't make any sense. At the same time, there's a lot of really fun pieces that have to do with money laundering schemes or other various types of accounting that are pretty cool to see in a movie. And you also get to see that the accountant is the superhero who makes life easier for everybody. I think it's a good movie. I think you should go out, buy it, watch it. It is pretty fun. But just remember what I said about the unrealistic accounting elements. Thanks for watching, and thanks in advance for clicking like and subscribe. It does really help us out. And as your reward, here's a clip that reminded me of busy season.
This place!
That's also what you do at the end of busy season.